I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be, I fooled around and fell in love. There was actually an old song, I think from the 1970s. I think the guy's name was like Melvin Bishop. He was like a one-hit wonder. And it was a song. It was a dude singing about the fact that he was screwing around, hooking up with one girl after another, and all of a sudden, boom, he met one girl, knocked his socks off, and he fell in love. So I've got an email here from a guy who's in a situation with a chick that he was kind of hooking up with. And I see a lot of guys doing this, going out and dating, hooking up with chicks that are kind of mediocre, aren't what they really want. And so they kind of just have a casual friends with benefits relationship. Like I had a buddy of mine from high school. This guy is he's a great guy. He's the type of friend to be there no matter anything happened to you, worst day of your life, he'd be there for you. But this particular guy, he was just terrible with him. And he still is to this day, 20-something years later. I love a guy like a brother. He's family to me, but he's just, when it comes to women, they just fucking walk all over and just totally dominate his ass. So it's like, I remember in high school, like when senior prom was coming up, so this girl invited him to prom, who he had really no interest in at all. And she's like, hey, would you like to go to prom with me? And he was like, sure. And so like, literally a couple weeks later, he decides that he's in love with this girl. And we go to prom night, so he just turns into this needy, chasey, pursuing, kind of creepy guy. So she goes and she gives him a let's just be friends speech on prom night. So he's all bummed because, everybody's thinking, hey, prom night, I'm going to get laid, I'm going to hook up. And he basically just talked her right out of sleeping with him. And I remember years later, this was after I was actually living in Orlando, and it was like right after I moved up there in the early 90s. I think it was like right at the time when I had gotten married and I was living with my wife. Well, he moved up there and he was living with another buddy of mine. And by this point, he had gained a bunch of weight, and so he lost a bunch of weight. He shaved his head, got himself in shape, kind of got his mojo back, started hooking up with chicks. And so he goes to Disney one night, and there was this place called, it's called Pleasure Island, but there's a place called, I think it's called Mannequins, was the name of the nightclub. And so he's there at the nightclub, he meets this girl, and she's a really pretty girl, but she's just big, just big, beautiful woman, if you will. And so I remember the next day after I was with my wife and my other best friend and my buddy, and we're all having dinner, and he's like, yeah, I met this girl, I hooked up with her at Disney World, and I think he like banged her in the parking lot or something. And he was all proud of himself, like he's a stud, he feels all good because he'd broken up with his other girl that just totally dicked him around. Same thing, started going out with this girl, she didn't really, he wasn't into her at all, he actually kind of thought she was ugly. But after he hooked up with her and fucked her a couple of times, he's like, all of a sudden he's in love with her. And so, make a long story short, we're sitting there having dinner, and he's laughing about this, this girl that he's just kind of hooking up with. And then like 2 weeks later, I hear that she hung out for 4 or 5 days, whatever days she was in, Disney. She was like from the Midwest, all the way across the country, basically. And so, and I was helping him to get his movie career going at this point. And he got a couple interviews going. And I mean, he's like really like on the verge of getting into the movie business, which is what he'd always want to do. Is what he went to college for, everything. And so, next thing I hear, he's like doing phone sex with this girl who's on the other side of the country, who he's like, just a few days before, he's like making fun of how fat she was and she wasn't what he wanted. But he gets a little taste of the pussy, and like now all of a sudden he's like, I'm in love with this girl. And like a month later, he just ups and he moves all the way across the country. And I was like, dude, what are you fucking doing? Oh, I love this girl. We're meant to be together. I was like, what about your career? Like, oh. And so he worked a bunch of bullshit jobs. And long story short, he ends up getting married to this girl. I flew out there for his wedding. Ended up hooking up with his cousin, who was actually really fucking hot, by the way. She was a great, great girl, by the way. And so it's like fast forward like 10, 15 years later, they end up getting divorced. And it's like the same thing. It's like, dude, it's like 20 years later, the guy's still doing the same shit. Every woman, he's like goes out with mediocre women. He's not really into them. But then all of a sudden he decides he's in love after he's had a taste of the pussy. That's just my buddy. That's just the way he happens to be. And one of the things I want to talk about is that when you're dating and you're hooking up with lots of different women, because I know what it is, how it's like, is you want to meet one really awesome super girl deep down. A girl that's not only gorgeous and hot and sexy and who's great to have sex with. And not only is she great to have sex with, but she loves having sex with you. And on top of that, you actually like hanging out with her, and she's fun, and you have a lot in common, and just no matter what you do or where you go, you have a great time with her. And you're in love with her, and she's in love with you. And ideally, that's what every guy wants. But where people struggle with, and I had a client, one of the guys I was talking to today, he's like, he had this, he gave himself this time limit to meet a particular girl and have a great relationship, get married, the whole 9 yards. And I said, the problem is you can't really go and experience life and just get in the flow of things because you got this looming deadline that's coming up, and he keeps changing this looming deadline. And instead of just being totally present and living in the moment and experiencing life and just having fun and knowing that eventually you're going to run into some really great, super awesome woman and fall in love. But I say this all the time, repetition is the mother of skill. And sometimes I've got guys that will read my stuff and they'll want to get one great girl, and then they won't go on practice. They're like, oh, I'm going to wait until the one perfect girl comes along. Well, the problem is that you really haven't done anything, because repetition is the mother of skill. You haven't done anything to practice. And now when you meet a girl and you're totally gonzo over her because she's knocks your socks off in every way, but you haven't done any practicing, and so since you haven't done any practicing, your emotions override your being sharp mentally. And so what happens is you project your high interest onto this particular girl, and you start making mistakes, and you just assume because her interest is really high to start out with that she feels the same way, and then it's always going to be that way. And then what happens is they notice that the girl's interest was going up, and all of a sudden it starts to go back down. And when it starts to go back down, then the guy starts chasing, because at this point he's emotionally attached. And when a guy's emotionally attached to a woman, that's usually when they completely fuck things up, because they start treating that woman different than all the rest of the women. And I was having a conversation, I can't remember, it was on YouTube recently with a guy, and he's disagreeing that you should sleep with and hook up with a bunch of different women to figure out what it is that you want in life. And I'm saying until you have experienced this yourself, you don't know what you don't know. And it's like, in other words, he's trying to argue with me. I've been doing this for the better part of a decade, and I've helped thousands of guys all over the world. And now a dude who's never hooked up and never had sex with a girl is going to start telling me how a guy should interact with women in order to get experience. It's like what he's really doing is he's emotionally invested in defending his position. And the problem is that what he's going to encounter is, say he waits 6 months, a year and a half, and boom, he meets a really great girl and knocks his socks off. And he thinks he knows what to do, but he's never been through the process of seduction successfully with any woman. And so it's awkward, and she's going to throw things at him. She's going to throw up resistance at certain key moments, and he's not going to know what to do. He's going to fuck it up, and he's going to end up totally creating a total train wreck with a great girl that if he just practiced what I taught, he would have gotten proficient at it. Because it's like, when you look at the National Football League, and they have their training camp, the players don't show up in training camp, and the coaches go, hey, here's your playbooks. First game is in 3 weeks, I'll see you then. It doesn't fucking work that way. They show up, and they're in meetings, or they're out in the practice field. Or they're in meetings, or they're in practice all day long during camp. And why? Because they're trying to install the playbook. Repetition is the mother of skill, and that's why they're running the plays over and over and over and over again. Because you always got new guys coming in, you got guys that are leaving, you got new plays that are trying to be run. Every player has different strengths. And so as you go through these things, that's how you get better. But if you don't ever practice, then when you go out and you interact with a super high quality woman that's a 10, and she's got her shit together emotionally, and she sees you, and you totally come unglued and start acting like Gumby, you're going to totally fuck it up. And you're going to be thinking about that girl that you fucked up with for the next 6 months to a year, and that's going to sting like a motherfucker. How do I know? Because I've been there, I've done that, I got the t-shirt. So the idea is to not get hung up fucking around with mediocre women. The idea is to date, hang out, have fun, and hook up, and to slowly increase your quality of the women that you date. Because the kind of women that you date today and that you're able to attract successfully today, 6 months from now, you won't give these women the time of day. But if you think that you're just going to skip all of that and you're going to go right to the total 10 and everything's going to be perfect from the get-go, I promise you, you're going to totally fuck it up. And you'll be one of those guys calling me at the last minute, begging me, oh, will you please take me in? Can you coach me today? And it's like, sorry, dude, you got to wait till I can fit you in because I'm busy. And it's like, don't be that guy. Take your time, apply this stuff, apply what I teach. And I've got a couple of quotes that I want to share with you. The first one is from Wayne Dyer. He says, when you meet someone whose soul isn't aligned with yours, send them love and move on. You've got to get good at letting women go. Letting women go that you know deep down aren't what you really want. And don't fall into the trap like this other client that I was talking about, where you've given yourself this time frame that you're going to meet Miss Perfect within 12 months or 6 months or whatever. It'll happen when it happens. What you really need to focus on is becoming awesome. Become great at picking up and seducing women. That's what you need to become great at. Doesn't mean you have to have sex with every single one of the girls, but you got to get good at the process that you're able to sleep with the ones that you want to sleep with. Because if you don't get an experience, when you meet a 10, you're going to totally fuck it up. The second one is luck is a matter of preparation meeting opportunity. That's Oprah. And I got another one from Oprah. She said, the whole point of being alive is to evolve into the complete person you were intended to be. And so I've got this email here from this guy. I'm going to run through it really quick. He says, Dear Corey, I'm going through a real transition in my life, and I'm having to confront a number of issues that I've been given too much power over me. Or I guess he's given his power away to this chick. He says, your words of wisdom about relationships are so spot on and hard-hitting, but brilliant. He says, I had an interesting situation which you may be able to help with. It deals with divorcees, which I think needs to be covered. He says, I know many divorcees are, in other words, he thinks you should avoid women that are divorced. And I'm not saying that at all, but some women are just totally fucked up, and yeah, you should avoid them. He says, however, I just genuinely want to be friends with this chick and get the odd shag here and there. The sex was good, and we talked about all her shit, and I ended up becoming the sex god counselor. I've done this sort of thing before with minimal hassles. I get laid, and they get a counselor. This time, though, was different because I was so in depth with her. When it ended, she started seeing another guy, and then I became her man friend, unlike other chicks. Well, the problem is that you went along with being the male girlfriend when you really wanted to stay friends with benefits, and you should have been man enough to say, hey, you know, enjoy your relationship with this guy, but I can't just be your friend now and not be able to hook up with you. That's not fair to me. And so, hey, if it doesn't work out, give me a call. I'd love to see you. And that's the proper way to handle that particular situation. So if you want to know how to keep those things going, that's what you got to say, and then walk away when the woman changes it. Otherwise, you're going to be the gay male girlfriend. He says, I've now kept in touch, and eventually I've had one or two more flings with her. And then, so in other words, you started pursuing her. He says, this time, however, I was left with a poor, vulnerable, confused lady who, after hooking up, she yearned for me. So he's talking about some other girl. So basically, make a long story short, this one of the girls he's casually hooking up with, now he thinks he's in love with her. But the thing that this guy is completely bullshitting himself on is the fact that if this girl really knocked his socks off, she would have been more than just a casual hookup. And the thing you got to look at is that if you're to get this girl back and you go right back to where you were, which obviously is mediocre and is not really fantastic and outstanding, which is what I'm all about. I want you to have a chick that knocks your fucking socks off. Not a chick that you're just kind of fucking every now and then, but you don't really want to have a relationship with her because she's not what you really want. That is a waste of your time. That's not what I teach. I'm all about teaching you to have somebody that's really awesome. And by focusing on yourself and focusing on being the very best man that you can be, standing up for yourself in key moments like this when a woman says, hey, I'm going to get serious with this other dude, and so I just want to be friends with you. It's like, hey, I'm not interested in being friends only. But if you want to still hang out and have fun, give me a call. And then you got to walk away. You got to have the balls to do it, because the first second that you compromise and you go along with it that's when you're going to get yourself stuck in friend zone. And like I said, the key here is to keep yourself available so you can meet somebody great, so you don't get stuck in these bullshit mediocre relationships, because you'll never be happy if you do that. So if you want to book a phone coaching session, go to my website right now, click the products tab, and follow the instructions, and I will talk to you soon.